Hello. World War III will not be televised. I hope you'll indulge me just for a few minutes while I engage you with my rather addled mind and try and make sense of a few things. Um, I'm coming up to 5 years since I started my blog, Seemorerocks. When I started, I had the energy to stay many hours of the day on the computer to keep up with many events chronicling the downfall and collapse of industrial civilization. Now I have a lot less energy and can only come onto the blog for a few hours at a time. So events everywhere are gathering pace more quickly than at any time in the past 5 years. There are catastrophes happening everywhere, all over the globe, so many so that it's just impossible to keep up. When I started off with this, listening to Mike Rupert, all those years ago, there was the catastrophe in Gulf of Mexico, which we were watching. None of that has gone away. We're still living with the consequences. Then there was Fukushima, that was just after the Christchurch earthquake in New Zealand. That's not gone away. It's only got worse. We have disasters all over the place. I can't even remember them all. An ongoing disaster now in St. Louis, but now an unprecedented disaster at Porter Ranch in Los Angeles. So how many other disasters, near disasters, have there been? There are the victims of earthquakes, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal, Chile, and now just this latest one in Taiwan. And don't let me forget the 2011 earthquake in Christchurch. How many of the victims of all of these events have been able to put their lives together and carry on as if these things had never happened? Judging just by one disaster that I know quite well, Christchurch, very, very few. Then there are the countless victims of war unleashed by the United States and its allies, by NATO, conflicts spreading from Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Libya, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. People slaughtered, people's lives destroyed, women raped. And that brings me on to, of course, Europe, always on the brink of economic collapse ever since I've started this. Now with more than 1 million refugees unleashed on the continent, people in dire need, but with terrorists and young people creating mayhem scattered amongst them. We pretend that we are facing a crisis, never crises, when we're actually facing a predicament, or perhaps even more accurately, predicaments. As I sit here, apart from the unusually hot weather here in Wellington, everything appears to be normal. People go to work, they go and sit in cafes, and they seem to be having a good summer. But all of that is if you don't look too closely and you don't see the conditions that many people are living in behind their four walls, living in their cars or in friends' garages or under bridges. Normalcy is, of course, a perfect illusion. So-called good news media fills us with bullshit and trivia telling us that everything's okay. If only we were just to roll over and go back to sleep, or even better still, borrow some money and go shopping. Everything just appears to be normal. But for the countless numbers of people I've alluded to, life is no longer normal in any sense of the word and is unlikely to return to normalcy at any time in the future. We're talking about millions of people affected by disasters of one sort or another. For me, sitting here in New Zealand, the situation for people living in Christchurch after an earthquake that happens 5 years ago comes to mind. These are all people who have not and will not get their lives back. The worse it gets, the more people want to ignore it and just forget about it, indulge in things that are increasingly inconsequential. It doesn't have to be Kim Kardashian or the culture of the glitterati. Even on social media, on Facebook, amongst people that are following all of this, following my own blog, the same thing's true. The other day, over 1,000 people were interested in a story, something that I'd posted, just as an interest story about armed personnel carriers coming onto the streets of Auckland. And all the while, nobody seems to be that interested in the plight of the ancient rainforests of Gondwana land in Tasmania, which are burning, are being destroyed. And if you're not into grieving for the forests and the wonderful creatures that live in them, disappearing forever, these fires are also acting as yet another positive feedback, producing yet more heat in a world already on fire. I increasingly wonder, on certain days, why I bother. Partially, of course, this is a result of my own declining health, which, apart from the attention of a few loving friends, goes unacknowledged, certainly by the medical system. So I'm just simply unable to keep up. It's becoming increasingly clear that I'm unable to keep up with the blog as I have for the last almost 5 years. I simply cannot keep chronicling things the way I have. I haven't got enough hours in the day available to me or energy. So my thinking at the moment is that I'm going to have to really decide in my own mind what are the most important things for us to all know. It can't be the details of things that are happening all around us, every little corner of the world anymore. But it has to be the big things that we need, where we need to keep our eyes open. I have to admit to being somewhat punch drunk and probably as confused as anybody else who's covering all of this. But by no means in order of importance is, of course, the meltdown of the world economy that's gathering pace. Then there seems to be the unstoppable move towards World War III, and I mean hot war here. Syria is the hot spot at the moment, with the Syrian army, supported by the Russian airstrikes, having all the terrorist groups of all stripes and descriptions on the run. Those forces that support ISIS and other terrorist forces, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and the neocons of the United States and of NATO are backed into a corner. They don't know what to do. And that's a very dangerous situation. It looks very much as if the madman Erdogan is quite willing to risk war with Russia by invading Syria, while Saudi Arabia, joined now by the Gulf states, is preparing an army of 150,000 to invade Syria. And all of this has the full backing of the madman in Washington. And today, John Kerry, the realist, relatively speaking, was heard to quip, "What do you want me to do? Go to war with Russia?" Things have never looked worse in the whole 5 years of my blogging. It looks as though we are on the verge of war between East and West. And in the background, we have what is more important than any of this, unless some madman presses the trigger and unleashes nuclear war. We have abrupt climate change that is gathering pace, not in geological, but in real time. But that will have to wait for another day very soon. Here in Wellington, we're waiting for Jennifer Hines to arrive in just a couple of days to give a presentation to those with ears to hear. to the very few that have the stomach to hear the truth rather than to indulge in petty pursuits, be part of the mass insanity in which we're all drowning. Anyway, I think that's probably enough from me for today.